Today on Locked On Rockies, there's a couple of areas where the Rockies really need to improve next year. Maybe they're not the most important areas in the big picture, but if they do improve in these areas, they are going to be a better team in 2025.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 6th day of November in the year 2024. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Rockies talk here. And we're also on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies and what you're thinking about when it comes to the offseason and more. But let's see. We'll dive into the comments, the questions, all that good stuff. So when you do leave questions and comments there, we like to dive into them. And I haven't gotten to all of them quite yet, but we will get to them as the offseason goes on. Today, I want to take a look at a couple of key statistical areas that I think the Rockies need to improve on in order to start taking steps in the right direction. And also, Purple Road took a look at the Rockies' financial situation, some money situation. We're going to dive into that as well. Before we get into everything today, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So I was thinking about this, and I don't know if I'm overvaluing these statistics, but I think that the Rockies are on a track to be left behind because of the trends that we're seeing in baseball, because of in some areas. I don't necessarily think it's going to be the biggest game changer in the world that if the Rockies don't steal more bases. But I don't like the fact that the Rockies are well below league average. Well, our bottom 5 team in baseball when it comes to stealing bases didn't even steal 100 bases, where over half the league did, or about half the league did, I should say. And when I'm scrolling through here, the only team that I guess stealing bases doesn't necessarily correlate to success or postseason success and wins, because here are a bunch of playoff teams that all finished in the bottom half of baseball, nearly bottom 10 of baseball. The Astros, the Yankees, the Tigers, and the Braves. All of these teams stole less than 100 bases this year, and it was something where, but they all made the playoffs. They all still were solid on offense. They still were able to drive in runs. But I think if you're not looking at this as a new tool to be successful, I think a prime example to look at this is look at how much more impactful Shohei Ohtani was this year because of the stolen bases. It wasn't just because of the home runs. It wasn't just because of the runners in scoring, batting average with runners in scoring position. You saw this. You saw how important the base running was, not only throughout the regular season, but in the World Series as well. The Yankees not being as good of a base running team, the Yankees not being a team that moves as much on the bases, they were burned by that. That got in the way. And again, as we're seeing more and more teams be more and more aggressive, especially when you're looking for ways to build up runs and build up some momentum, the Rockies have to be better than this. They cannot be. This is another example of where the Rockies have found themselves at the bottom of baseball. These trends have to stop. I know it's not going to be the difference maker, but I just want to highlight how big of a gap there is between the top base stealers and the bottom base stealers. And again, maybe you're sitting there saying, well, a good chunk of these teams didn't make the playoffs. What does it really mean? The Rockies shouldn't be over 100 stolen bases behind, almost 140 stolen bases behind the number one spot of Washington Nationals. They stole 223 bases this year. The Brewers stole 217, the Reds 207, the Rays 178, Guardians 148, Phillies 148. There's a couple of playoff teams, or 3 playoff teams for you right there. Because on the flips, so you can kind of find the other side of that coin right there. You will have a better shot at the playoffs if you steal more bases. You will have a shot at being a better offense if you steal more bases. You will have a shot at driving in more runs if you steal more bases. Dodgers came in at 10th with 136 as well. 136 as well. In case you're curious, other playoff teams: Padres at 120, Mets at 106. So I don't think the Baltimore also was at 98, by the way. So I don't think the Rockies, with the current roster and the players on there, are going to make a huge jump here. But you can see why this is an important stat. You can understand why this is why this can be an effective tool for teams, because if you're able to start putting runners in scoring position, especially for the Rockies at Coors Field, if you can create more scoring chances for yourself throughout the ball games, that's going to help you. It's going to help you chase pitchers out of games sooner rather than later. It's going to help you put the pressure on. It's going to help you avoid trailing so often in games. It's going to help you avoid getting behind. You have to do it effectively. You have to do it well. And when you really look at it, down the line, the Rockies don't have a ton of base stealers. When you look at who exactly were the players doing a lot of the stealing of bases. I mean, in reality, there was only 2 guys really being effective at stealing bases last year. That's Brenton Doyle with 30 and Michael Tolley at 10. But I do think it's a problem that the rest of the lineup, it's pretty minuscule. Ezekiel Tovar only 6 there, for example. Nolan Jones only 5. I know that's with the health of Nolan Jones, that can change. I'm not expecting Ryan McMahon and Brendan Rodgers to be base stealers next year. I don't think that's gonna change. But I am concerned by the amount of zeros on this stolen bases. I am concerned about the amount of 1 stolen base, under 5 stolen bases that we're seeing from this team. Especially mixed in with the fact that it was hard for this team to score runs. It was hard for this offense to be consistent last year. And when you look at it, stolen bases, when it comes to in relations to runs scored throughout the year, it's not necessarily 1 for 1, because you look at the Diamondbacks scored 886 runs last year. They stole 119 bases. The Dodgers scored 842 with 136 stolen bases. But we saw these teams, right? We saw the Rockies play these teams. How often did the Rockies get in trouble, fall behind early, because this was a team that as soon as they had someone on, boom, they're making a move. Boom, they're stealing bases. Boom, they're putting runners in motion. They're not afraid to hit and run. I think this trend is going to change next year, because I'm just looking here close to, this is roughly like the top 10-ish, probably. Out of the top 10 teams in runs scored last year, what is this? 7 out of the 10 had at least 100 stolen bases or more. The only teams that scored were in the top 10 in runs scored this year. The only teams that didn't steal 100 bases were the Yankees, the Orioles, and coming in at number 10, the Twins. The Twins only stole 65 bases last year. And still, of course, you're looking. The Twins as a team still batted .246, .315 OBP, a slugging of .411, an OPS of .726, drove in 742 runs last year. So still we're able to create some offense there. But I think when you're looking at the trends here, when you're overall looking at at the stolen bases, there is evidence to suggest that you're putting yourself in better positions to score. It's not 1-for-1. Obviously, it doesn't immediately mean that, especially when you're looking at, it's interesting when looking at the Twins too, because they weren't a team that was a leader in home runs. They weren't a team that was really a leader in most categories. Interesting enough, it looks like where they really shone, and this highlights the importance of stolen bases, I think, for if you were a Twins fan. 309 doubles hit by the Twins last year. If you're putting people in positions where they're not on first base, if you're getting people to move over and steal a base for second, who knows what that run total could have been with those doubles? Who knows what type of difference that would have made for the Twins, putting those runners in scoring position when hitting all those doubles. And I think the Rockies are a team that could really benefit from that as well. That it does fit into their MO as well. Ezekiel Tovar, for example, always hitting all of those doubles and something encouraging. Imagine if we were able to put runners in motion, get Brenton Doyle moving a little bit more, or Nolan Jones, or some of these other guys, these younger guys, in motion a little bit more to drive in some runs. The Rockies were 7th in baseball last year with doubles, 277 there. Imagine if it was a lot more. Instead of first to thirds, it was second to homes. With the rules, with the changes, with the disengagement rules, with everything that they have done to enhance base stealing, the Rockies cannot allow this to be an area where they continue to slip and continue to fall behind. This needs to be another area where they look for growth and look for innovation, because I think a Rockies team that can hit for extra bases and steal bases is a great recipe for success at Coors Field. I think it can be exactly the thing the Rockies would need to win more shootouts at Coors Field. A couple of other areas, again, smaller areas, they're the big main concerns for the Rockies, the big main picture issues. But I want to keep pointing out a couple of these smaller things here, and also take a look at the financial situation for the Rockies, thanks to an article from Purple Row. We'll do that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. FanDuel has got you covered because it's America's #1 sportsbook, and you can get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can get $5 bet $5 and can get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Yes, that's $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And remember, please gamble responsibly. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here each and every day, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. I thank you for making us your first listen of the day. If you need a second listen, go check out Locked On MLB. From the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section, Jim Cusero says, I asked if there are any good, not great, obviously, MLB veterans that the Rockies might be able to get in the offseason that could help the team in 2025. Jim, I don't know if you're replying to the episode from yesterday. While the answer to that question is most likely yes, really. As I was discussing yesterday, I am in a weird spot with Rockies in free agency this year. I don't necessarily know what type of moves the Rockies will make and want to make. I don't necessarily know what the target specifically is for the Rockies. If you're looking to add the veteran bat that we've talked so much about this offseason, you have to factor that into where is that player playing on the field? How much is that player playing on the field? Because the Rockies, again, if the choice is develop young guy, young guys, hiccup attack out of nowhere. If the goal of 2025 is just young guy development, see what we have, go through there, then I think that really limits your options. Then I think the move that the Rockies made with the Brewers could be it. Those level of moves. I don't have specific names right off the top of my head. We looked through the list. There's a variety, I think, specifically in the bullpen that you can choose from that will help this team. But it's just figuring out, how does a position player acquisition fit in with what the Rockies' plans are for their younger guys? And what does that but the need for a veteran bat, a veteran piece in the bullpen, or they're hoping in the bullpen, they're hoping for bounce back years from Kinley and Justin Lawrence. I mean, they might be just rocking with that. So I know that doesn't answer your question specifically, Jim, but free agency for the Rockies is in a really weird spot right now for what I think they want to do. I think it's going to put them in a situation in which I don't think they are sure. Well, I shouldn't say maybe they don't think they're sure, but I don't know exactly what the plan and what the focus will be in that area. So, but thank you as always, Jim. Thank you to everyone. Remember, we want to answer your Rockies questions all throughout the offseason. So make sure you're firing them off there in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section and let me know what's on your mind. So we were talking a lot about stolen bases there in the first segment, and just some other areas I kind of wanted to highlight where I really think we need to start seeing the Rockies take steps forward. And these are all going to be pretty obvious here. I think one of the biggest things here, I think the Rockies, it's great that they have started climbing back up the home run count, ending up right in the middle of the pack at 15th last year with 179 home runs. I still want to see that improve. I still think this is an area where I don't know if the Rockies have the firepower to do it, but the trend for home runs needs to continue to trend upward. The Rockies need to be trending back towards a team that hits a lot of home runs. I really do want to see this team have a few guys flirt with 20 home runs next year. I mean, I really don't think it's that crazy to expect or to hope for. Off the top of my head, I'm thinking of 4 guys that I hope are at least hitting 20 home runs, flirting with it. Bretton Doyle, Ezekiel Tovar, Ryan McMahon, and Nolan Jones. The Rockies need those guys to hit for power. The Rockies need those guys to drive the ball over the wall. It's something that the Rockies for sure need. But I'm encouraged. It's weird to say, but it's encouraging that the Rockies hit as many doubles as they did, because I think that that's something that's going to be one area in which those extra base hits at Coors Field are going to play so well. We know that for sure. So these are some good trends in the right direction for where the Rockies finish. That we're seeing a little bit more oomph to an offense that desperately needs it. There's still a long way to go in terms of being an impressive offense. But at least there's starting to be some signs. There's starting to be some things that point to the right direction. But with so much of this, it's about what does year 3 look like for these guys? What type of setbacks can we expect? What will happen? Is health going to be a thing? There's a million factors that go into these numbers and to these young guys improving on where they're at. So there's just there's the big problems, of course, that we know, like strikeouts and things like that. But it is good to see that the Rockies offense is a little bit better than we thought. But I don't like I never like seeing the Rockies below 15th really in anything. And here's a big problem. One of the big problems too that we saw with the Rockies offense last year. The Rockies were 23rd in baseball last year with on base percentage, 305. And they were only the 5 points off from being second to worst compared to the Tigers at 300. But this is not the company you want to be with. The Tigers being the exception, of course, with them having a nice run there to finish the season. But when you're sitting at the bottom of the standings and it's the White Sox, it's the Angels, it's the Pirates, it's the A's. Rays struggled last year. That ain't good. And again, that batting average was still a below middle of the pack. So still not great. And then when you throw in the slugging here, the Rockies still find themselves right around the middle. So if this team can break out on offense, if this team can get on base more and steal more, I think that's going to generate some more runs from them. I think that's going to make them a more interesting offense. I think that's going to make them make them have a more complete attack when going up against good teams. If you can get on base and put the pressure on teams early, that's exactly what you want to do, because so often we found the Rockies trying to play catch up last year, and that is a massive problem. It gets in the way of momentum. It gets in the way of starting the game off right and getting yourself in the right headspace, et cetera, et cetera. So there are so many areas for improvement that the Rockies need. But I think, plain and simple, the Rockies need to get on base and steal more, and that will help kickstart the offense a little bit more. I think it will help make the Rockies a more interesting threat when it comes to that. Let's take a look at the financial situation for the Colorado Rockies after some reporting by Purple Row. We're going to do that coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes Hims. Guys, you ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? It's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims. So you can feel confident knowing you can perform whenever you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compound products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with the healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. We are also brought to you by Arena Club. For most of us that like collecting cards, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka, Elly De La Cruz, or Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards. If you love collecting, that's some serious money to drop. But thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Slab packs are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. The Arena Club grading process is fast, accurate, and transparent, with the full grade rationale provided and an explanation of how your card was scored. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb, code LOCKEDONMLB for 10% off your first purchase. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And we're talking a little bit about the Rockies payroll. And man, listen to this headline by a friend of the show, Evan Lang. The Colorado Rockies' looming austerity is a direct consequence of poor payroll decisions. Hitting them with the vocab over there on Purple Row, and from Evan here. I want to read from this. Over the last 8 seasons, dating back to the start of the Bud Black managerial era, the Rockies haven't exactly been cheapskates. Since 2017, they have tended to hang in the middle of the pack for team payroll, while also not dipping below $100 million in team payroll for a full regular season since 2014. The payroll here for the Rockies since 17, 139 million. I'm just going to kind of guess here. Or I'm going to round up, basically. 140-ish million in 17, 144-ish million in 18, 157 million in 19, 67 million in the pandemic year, 116 million in 2021, 140 million in 2022. 23 jumps up to 171 million. Holy cow, the Rockies payroll was 171 million in that 23 season. Woof. 147 million was the payroll for last year. Let's see here. I want to zoom forward here a little bit. And Evan references a Saunders article from last weekend. Saunders reported on Saturday that the 61 and 101 Colorado Rockies spent approximately $2.4 million per win in 2024, putting them at the 14th highest cost per victory in the league. The Rockies are one of 6 teams with losing records in the top 15 of this category, along with fellow bottom feeders in the White Sox and Angels. 6 other teams in the top 15 made the playoffs, including the eventual World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. The Rockies' poor spending over the last decade is well documented, from the much maligned $106 million super bullpen of Wade Davis, Brian Shaw, and Jake McGee to giving Ian Desmond $70 million over 5 years. More recently, the standout would be Chris Bryant's 7-year, $182 million albatross for a player who has yet to make it through 162 games over 3 seasons. The 2024 season was a further microcosm of the Rockies' foolish spending habits. Chris Bryant made $28 million to play just 37 games while being worth just negative 0.7 WAR. Antonio Senzatella and German Marquez, both coming off Tommy John surgery, earned a combined $22 million for a total of 4 starts. Ryan McMahon made $12 million and played a full season while becoming an All-Star and a Gold Glove finalist. However, he hit just 188, 283, 309 with 6 home runs after the All-Star break. Kyle Freeland made $16 million, and a 38-year-old Charlie Blackmon was paid $14.5 million for his Swan Song seasons. Both were available for most of the 2024 season. I think that's important for Rockies fans to hear those numbers. The Rockies spend money, but it's not effective. It's not in the right ways. It's overcommitting. I mean, those numbers are damning. To spend, what is that? $50 million. $50 million last year of the Rockies payroll was spent on 37 games of Chris Bryant and 4 starts from Antonio Senzatella and German Marquez. The Ryan McMahon deal kind of, again, as much as we can sit there and be excited and look at these when they signed these contracts, it was kind of moments of exciting, but it just goes to show you this team, I think, isn't the best at evaluating what is a good contract. What's the right contract? I appreciate that the Rockies pay their players well. I appreciate that these athletes get paid. I am a fan of that. But it is interesting to see how many examples of this team struggling to put get performance from players that they pay. It is really interesting. But we will see what happens, because this is to close this out, because they go on and talk about the players and the TV deal. By the way, $77 million in the Rockies payroll is accounted by 5 players: Bryant, Freeland, McMahon, Senzatella, and Marquez. And it's pretty crazy that when you look at that list, you're confident that 2 of those players are going to be healthy throughout the season. I need to see what's on the other side for German and Senza for me to be fully confident in their abilities to pitch the full season. I'm not even psyching myself up for 100 games of Chris Bryant. But I think Evan says it pretty well here. The Rockies' revenue issues won't just vanish. With no TV deal in place and attendance slowly dwindling after years of bad decisions and losing, the Colorado Rockies will eventually need to wise up when it comes to their payroll, or they will be doomed to eternally repeat the mistakes of the past. And I think that can say a lot about a lot of things. I think the Rockies, I think that that sentence kind of summarizes it all up. The Rockies have to start looking into doing things differently because what's going on right now ain't working, and it ain't sustainable either. Folks, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB with our guy Sully. If you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services as well. Go check them out there. And folks, make sure that you're leaving comments. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me know what you want me to talk about here on the Locked On Rockies podcast throughout the offseason on the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. And until next time, I'm Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.